Hello, and thank you for coming. I'm Rod Ketner. I'm from Capsugel Bend. Bend Research's division of Capsugel and the Dosage Form Solutions Group. And I'm going to be talking about some novel solutions for pediatric dosing of pharmaceuticals. Kind of to set the stage is there are a number of technologies out there and delivery platforms for pediatrics which overcome a number of delivery challenges. We found a unique subset of problems that are poorly addressed by some of the standard formulations, such as a liquid formulation, oral dissolving dosage form, sachets, or capsules. The combination of these drug delivery technologies, standard technologies, is they don't always solve the challenges that we can get with pediatrics, such as palatability, taste, mouthfeel, swallowability, caregiver safety. I mean, liquid formulations, if you can develop a liquid formulation, it's very simple, straightforward. You can get dose flexibility. But caregiver safety can be an issue, and to protect the caregiver and make sure that they're not being exposed to high potent, high drugs, and also dose flexibility and ease of administration. If we talk about taste masking and go into a little bit of detail here, the science behind taste masking is relatively straightforward. We have a drug that goes into solution that can permeate across or diffuse across the mucous boundary layer of the tongue and bind to receptor cells. If we're going to taste mask, we want to minimize the drug concentration in solution, and we can do this through complexing agents or other types of micellar species that prevent the drug from reaching a high concentration at the mucous boundary layer. We can also change the activity through complexation. We can also add viscosity modifiers to change the diffusion coefficient across the mucous boundary layer. And then finally, we can taste mask things by adding flavors and salts and sugars to alter the perceptions of taste. If we simply minimize the concentration of drug by keeping the drug in the solid state, we can get around a lot of the technology challenges around these later technologies or fundamental approaches. One of the approaches that we've looked at and getting a lot of interest in is the multi-particulate technologies. Multi-particulates being very broadly defined as pellets, beads, granules, particles of 1 or 2 microns or less. Even mini tabs in some cases. And there's many well-known products on the market using mini tabs, and we're seeing broad acceptance of multi-particulates for particularly oncology compounds and a number of other classes of compounds in the marketplace. The UK Pediatric Consortium is focusing on multi-particulates, for example, for delivery of bitter, poorly palatable drugs. Multi-particulates have certain advantages, and if the particle size is kept small enough, they can have very good taste, mouthfeel, and then with coatings and different types of barrier technologies, you can taste mask them. They also have the advantage that you can easily encapsulate them into a number of different types of dosage forms that are in sachets to give the dose flexibility needed, particularly for pediatric platforms where you can have many doses as the patient, depending on the patient's size. The multi-particulates themselves, they do fit into a number of platforms, as I did. Delivery platforms or final product platforms, as I mentioned. Everything from suspensions all the way through capsules, easy to administer sprinkle caps, or pellet or liquid combinations and other types of presentations, either that have some sort of marking or therapeutic advantage for combination products, for example. For very high doses, sachets can be quite attractive. The multi-particulates have also a functional advantage, and that is the ability to get a number of drug different profiles. The number of technologies that we have worked on really break into 2 categories. One are fluid bed layered multi-particulates, where the drug is on an inert core and layered, held in typically with a polymer or as a crystal or as an amorphous drug. And then these can be coated into different types of coatings that are either pH trigger, diffusion trigger, or some sort of a bursting mechanism. Also, we can put the drug into the core itself, and this can be done with a number of different technologies, such as the lipid multiparticulates or the LMPs, which I'll talk about quite a bit, or the erosion control granules. These can be a number of different things, such as CPS technology or just a fluid bed granulation Again, and all of these can be coated with the various types of functional coatings necessary to achieve taste masking or modified release. Of course, many tabs have the same sort of approach too. But again, I'm going to be focusing on the LMPs. What we're looking for in the LMP functionality or in the multi-particulate functionality is we can get a number of sustained release or modified release formulations where we can have long or short, and these are typically controlled by the core matrix of the LMP or mini-tab. You can use functional coatings. You also can get taste masks where you can get a delay in the burst. Typically, we'll use something like a smart seal or a number of different diffusion barriers to slow down the initial delay and then ultimately get a release when we get a trigger pH or certain osmotic potential in the GI tract. And then finally, by selecting our excipients, using certain surfactants, we can induce fed states with the, by adding a bunch of micellar type species or surfactants, or by controlling particle size and get bioavailability enhancements using the very similar technologies. Of course, you can also go into the amorphous state and get dissolution and solubility enhancements. But really, the focus here today is about the taste masking technology and the approaches that we have used. In addition to taste masking, you can also put functional coats with enteric coatings to get gastric protection for acid unstable drugs. And then also you can put a series of coatings on, such as a floral coating, which is a type of starch that can get delivery of the drug all the way down into the lower GI tract or the colonic delivery. There. When we formulate an LMP or a lipid multiparticulate for a pediatric formulation, typically we're dealing with drugs that have relatively high solubility, although we would formulate them a little bit differently, and we want a slow release rate that gets around the taste masking. It doesn't touch the tongue, get the drug in the mouth. And the types of formulations that we use is we'll have an active, a lipid carrier. Very typical formulations are glycerolbutene, stearic acid, stearyl alcohols, these types of melting waxes. By selecting the right melting point of the wax, you can control the release rate. Then you also can include a dissolution enhancer in this process. The dissolution enhancer can be used to control the mechanism of release, whether it's through a diffusion or erosion or a tortuous path type release mechanism. The process I'll go into more detail, but typically for these types of lipid multiparticulates, we use a melt spray congeal process using a heated spinning disc, which is fed by an extruder. And again, I'll show a little bit more detail there. The materials that come off the melt spray congeal disc typically have a nice disperse particle size distribution of about 200 microns. We can vary this by the heat, the viscosity of the melt, the heat of the disc, and the spinning rate from anywhere from down to 75 to 350 microns. These are nice round spherical waxy materials, so even at the larger particle size, you don't have a grittiness and you can have very good mouthfeel for these types of particles. Again, the ranges of formulations there. There is a commercial product on the market that's a modified release product, the Z-Max product, and this is a single dose antibiotic. So this is a commercialized product, a commercialized technology that Pfizer has developed in collaboration with Ben Research. By controlling the dissolution enhancer, we can select our formulation for the various types of release profiles we're looking for. For many of the pediatric formulations, we want to match the IR performance of a soluble drug, and so we want to formulate an immediate release core. And this is done typically by adding additional, in this case, we can add an additional dissolution enhancer and get the dissolution rate of the drug coming out of the core, typically anywhere from 10 to 50% active in the cores up higher. And really, the key here is to know the solubility of the drug and the amount of dissolution enhancer or solubilizers that are necessary. The solubilizers act as a pore former in the waxy matrix, and the dissolution mechanism can be impacted by the number of channels. A way to visualize the dissolution mechanism in a waxy matrix is this cartoon that we've drawn where we have the microsphere surface and the crystalline drug represented by the blue shapes. As we add water-soluble pore filler, so this would be the dissolution enhancer. We form channels in between the drug crystals. And by controlling that level, we can control the tortuous path that the drug has to travel through to be released. By making more pores, we create the much faster dissolution rate, and we can achieve the IR core. Nature, of course, does this in our tide pools, and you get the release based on the number of channels that you can get the water in and out of. So by reducing the number of channels, you can have a buildup of drug and slow the release down. So again, it's a modified release, IR release type of process. If we want to do a full view of the manufacturing process, we would take a compound. We can do a melt tank batch process, or we can do continuous feed, or where we take the melt, which is just an extruder, and spray congeal. We spray this onto the spray congeal platform, form the multi-particulates. Then we can put the coating on there, or the functional coating, again, something like Smart Seal or HPC or HPMC, to delay the release of the drug in the mouth for pediatric platform using a fluid bed process. These are typically aqueous coating process, either using a soluble polymer or a latex. And then we can take these multi-particulates and encapsulate them. So the most common type of capsule that we're using these days are the sprinkle caps that Capsugel develops. And I'll talk a little bit about that, of course. The scales for the LMP manufacture, we have a small scale that can do kind of 10 to 100 grams of, 20 to 1 kilogram of material using a heated syringe pump. In the lab scale, we can go through 1 kilogram to 100 kilograms. The throughput on these processes are very high. It's typically 10 to 20 kilograms per hour on the melt spray congeal process. The rate limiting step for manufacture is typically the fluid bed coating process. And then ultimately the commercial equipment, which fabricated at Bend and is used in Vega Baja for the azithromycin product, is on the hundreds of kilograms on the batch size. It can be made into a continuous process, just like any extrusion process could be. When we fill these into the sprinkle caps, this is a capsule that's much easier to open, that's been developed by Capsugel. It's a swallowable, same dimension type of a capsule that's much easier to open. And it does maintain its closure in pre-locked position, and it is available currently in HPMC, so the VCAPS Plus, and also the Sigma Series Coni-Snap in gelatin. This is being expanded into multiple sizes and multiple all polymers in the next couple of years. So this is available currently. And it can be simply open, very simple to use. You can even put arrows on it. The caregiver can open these, sprinkle this onto food, into suspension, or into any dosing vehicle that's acceptable for the coating and the multi-particulates themselves, mixed and then given to the caregiver. So I think you're supposed to open the capsules this way, but everyone does it that way. But yeah. And the difference really is the force that's required to open the capsules. So the force for opening a standard capsule with a double locking mechanism is somewhere on the order of 400 units, and this is down less to 100 units. So I don't know what the units are, sorry. But the force is reduced by about 5x. And in patient caregiver tests, they have found that the new sprinkle design, 81% of the participants found the opening to be very easy, whereas less than a third of the users found the standard capsule to open. And certainly as you get to smaller capsule size, we all know that the smaller capsules get more and more difficult. So the combination of the lipid multiparticulates, quite a number of products being taken into late-stage clinical trials for pediatrics and moving forward. So the combination of the new Coni-Snap sprinkle design and the multi-particulate technology is a novel offering that we're developing for quite a number of companies to meet their pediatric dosing needs. And that's my talk. All right.